If you don't like me hanging out with my ex, my boyfriend said, leaning back on the couch, then maybe you should find someone else. The room went quiet, not dramatic quiet, the kind that makes your ears ring and your thoughts slow down just enough for the truth to catch up. Maybe I will, I replied. He laughed at first, like I was joking. I wasn't. A month later, I was sitting in an Italian restaurant downtown, candlelight flickering between wine glasses, laughing across the table from a man who made breathing feel easy again. And that's when the front door opened. My ex-boyfriend walked in. He was holding her hand, and when he saw me, he froze. I'm 31 years old, and I spent 2 years with a man who made me feel unstable for wanting boundaries. 2 years of being told I was overreacting, reading too much into things, making it weird. 2 years of swallowing discomfort and convincing myself that love meant tolerance, even when it hurt. For the first year, everything really was perfect. We met at an industry conference, different companies, same field. He was charming, articulate, magnetic in a quiet way. We moved in together after 10 months, talked about engagement around the year-and-a-half mark. I thought we were building something solid. Then his ex-girlfriend came back into his life. He told me not to worry. He told me they were just friends. He told me I was being insecure when I asked questions that any reasonable partner would ask. And when I finally said I wasn't okay with it, when I finally spoke up for myself, he told me to find someone else. So I did. What he didn't expect was that I'd actually walk away. What he didn't expect was that I wouldn't come crawling back once he realized I was serious. And what he definitely didn't expect was that the first time he saw me again, I wouldn't be alone, heartbroken, or waiting. I'd be happy. And the look on his face when he realized that was the moment everything flipped. I was 29 when I met him. We didn't meet in a romantic way. No sparks across a crowded room, no dramatic first impression. It was practical, almost boring. An industry conference in a hotel ballroom with bad lighting and worse coffee. We worked for different companies but in the same field, so our paths crossed naturally during panels and networking sessions. He stood out because he didn't try too hard. While other people were loudly selling themselves, he listened, asked thoughtful questions, smiled in a way that felt genuine instead of rehearsed. When we talked, it felt easy, grounded, like I didn't need to perform. We exchanged numbers under the excuse of professional networking, but by the second coffee, it was clear we were interested in more than work. He was 30 at the time, confident, articulate, emotionally expressive in a way I hadn't experienced before. He talked about his goals openly, talked about relationships like they mattered. When he looked at me, I felt seen, not just admired. The first year was everything people mean when they say it felt right. We dated for 10 months before moving in together. Not impulsively, not out of pressure. It just made sense. We were already spending most nights together anyway. We cooked dinners, built routines, had inside jokes, disagreed without cruelty. He made me feel chosen. Around the year-and-a-half mark, conversations about the future started happening naturally. Not heavy, not forced. Casual comments about marriage, kids someday, where we might live. He talked about engagement like it was an eventuality, not a question. I let myself believe him. Looking back, there were small things I brushed off because they didn't seem worth worrying about. He hated confrontation and avoided difficult conversations. He liked being liked by everyone. He struggled with boundaries, especially when it came to people from his past. But none of that felt threatening at the time. I had no issue with exes in theory. I had my own. I believed adults could stay friends with people they once loved. I believed trust was about freedom, not control. That belief would be tested sooner than I realized. His ex-girlfriend's name started coming up casually at first. A funny story from years ago. A shared memory, a reference that didn't seem loaded. They'd dated for 4 years in their early 20s. According to him, they broke up because she moved for work. No drama, no betrayal, just wrong timing. I didn't feel threatened. Not then. I thought I was secure. I thought I was mature. I thought love meant not questioning every shadow. What I didn't understand yet was the difference between trust and self-abandonment, and how easily one can masquerade as the other. Things shifted the week his ex-girlfriend moved back into town. At first, it was framed as coincidence. She'd accepted a new job, same city, same industry, same circles. According to him, they hadn't really spoken in years. Maybe a birthday text here and there, a like on social media, nothing significant. That changed quickly. Her name started appearing in our conversations with an ease that made it feel like she'd never left. She sent me a meme you'd like. She asked if I'd been to this new brewery. She's apartment hunting and wanted advice. Each mention came with a smile, a lightness. His tone softened in a way I couldn't ignore once I noticed it. I told myself not to read into it. I didn't want to be the girlfriend who policed friendships. I didn't want to project insecurities where there were none. I reminded myself that I trusted him, and that trust meant letting people exist in each other's lives without suspicion. But then the comparison started. Casual at first, almost unintentional. She used to love that restaurant. She always hated early mornings, too. You and her would probably get along. Each comment landed quietly, but together they formed something heavy. What unsettled me most wasn't that he talked about her. It was how he reacted when her name lit up his phone. His entire face changed. His posture, his energy, like someone had flipped a switch inside him. I started noticing patterns I hadn't before. He'd cancel plans with me because something came up and later mention he'd run into her. He'd text constantly during dinner, then wave it off when I asked who it was. He'd defend her immediately if I questioned anything, even gently. "You're overthinking," he'd say. "She's just a friend. You're allowed to have feelings, but this feels unnecessary." The more I tried to explain how I felt, the more I was made to feel like my discomfort was the problem, not the situation. Friends noticed before I fully admitted it to myself. One evening, a friend pulled me aside and said, "You know you look tense every time you talk about him and his ex, right?" I laughed it off, but the comment stayed with me. I started replaying conversations in my head. The sighs, the defensiveness, the way he framed my concerns as emotional rather than logical, like wanting basic consideration was some kind of flaw. Still, I didn't confront him outright. I wanted to be fair. I wanted to be calm. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But doubt has a way of growing when it's fed consistently. And by the time I realized how much space his ex had taken up in our relationship, it already felt like I was competing with a ghost he wasn't ready to let go of. 3 months before everything ended, it finally came to a head. It was a Saturday morning, quiet in that lazy way weekends are supposed to be. We were sitting at the kitchen counter, coffee going cold between us, when he said it casually, too casually. "I'm meeting her for lunch today." I looked up. "Her?" "My ex," he said, like it was obvious. "We're grabbing food downtown." Something tightened in my chest. Not jealousy, not panic, just exhaustion. "Okay," I said carefully. "Could I come with you?" He stared at me like I'd suggested something inappropriate. "Why would you need to come?" he asked. "It's just lunch." "I know," I replied. "I just thought it might be nice to finally meet her. You talk about her a lot." His expression shifted immediately. Defensive, irritated. "Don't be weird about this," he said. "She's my friend. I'm allowed to have friends." "I didn't say you weren't," I answered. "I just think it's reasonable that I'd want to meet someone you're spending this much time with." He let out that sigh, the one that always made me feel like I was asking for too much. "If you don't trust me, just say that." "It's not about trust," I said. "It's about boundaries." He scoffed. "Boundaries? You're having lunch with your ex multiple times a week," I continued, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. "You text her constantly. Last week, you canceled our dinner plans because she needed help moving furniture." "She didn't have anyone else," he shot back. "She has other friends," I said. "And I'm supposed to be your priority sometimes." That's when the conversation spiraled. He accused me of being controlling. I reminded him I'd never asked him to cut her off, just to include me or acknowledge that the situation wasn't normal. He called me insecure. I said I was being reasonable. We went in circles until he stood up abruptly, grabbed his jacket and keys. "If you don't like me hanging out with my ex," he said sharply, "then maybe you should find someone else." The words hung in the air. I looked at him for a long moment, and something inside me finally settled. I was tired. Tired of feeling like the villain for having feelings. Tired of being told I was imagining patterns that were clearly there. Tired of shrinking my needs to keep the peace. "Maybe I will," I said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Maybe I will find someone else. Someone who doesn't make me feel crazy for wanting basic respect." "You're seriously doing this right now?" he asked. "Over lunch with a friend?" "No," I said. "I'm doing this because you just told me to replace you, so I'm taking your advice." I grabbed my keys and walked out. That night I stayed at my friend Kevin's place. I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I just felt done. The next day when I came back to pack a bag, he was crying, apologizing, saying he didn't mean it, but I had. And that was the moment the relationship ended, even if it took weeks for the logistics to catch up. When I came back the next day to pack, the apartment felt unfamiliar, like the air itself had shifted. He was sitting on the couch, eyes red, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. "I didn't mean it," he said the second he saw me. "I was angry. I didn't think you'd actually leave." I set my bag down slowly. "But you did say it." "I know," he said quickly, "and I'm sorry. I was just frustrated. I didn't mean find someone else. I just meant—" "I know what you meant," I interrupted gently. "You meant you didn't want to deal with my boundaries." He stood up, pacing. "That's not fair. I just don't understand why this has to be such a big deal." That sentence told me everything. I looked at him and realized how tired I was, not in my body, but in my spirit. Tired of explaining the same feelings over and over in different words. Tired of justifying why I deserve consideration. Tired of having to prove that what I felt was valid. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just done." He stared at me, disbelief flickering across his face. "You're really ending this?" "I think it ended before today," I replied. "I just finally caught up." He started crying then, full, quiet sobs. He apologized again and again, said he'd change, said he'd set boundaries, said he'd stop seeing her if that's what I wanted. And for a moment I felt the pull, the instinct to comfort him, to soften, to give him one more chance because of everything we'd shared. But then I remembered all the times I'd been made to feel unreasonable, all the times I'd swallowed discomfort to avoid conflict, all the times I'd doubted myself because it was easier than facing the truth. "I don't want to tell you who you can or can't see," I said. "I want to be with someone who doesn't put me in this position to begin with." That's when he went quiet. I packed slowly, deliberately. I took only what I needed. Clothes, personal things. I told him I'd come back later for the rest. As I left, he asked, "What if this is a mistake?" I paused at the door. "I've been making mistakes for months. This isn't one of them." Over the next week, I moved out completely, found a temporary sublet, started untangling the small, mundane things that tie two lives together: utilities, shared accounts, routines. He texted constantly at first. Apologies, memories, promises. He reached out to my friends, my sister, even my mom. Everyone got the same story. He'd messed up. He wanted another chance. I was being stubborn. My mom listened, then told him something I'll always be grateful for. "Maybe she needs space," she said, "and maybe you should respect that." After about 3 weeks, the messages slowed. Then they stopped. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe he's finally accepted that it's over. I was wrong. For about 2 weeks after the silence began, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief. Just quiet. The kind that lets you hear your own thoughts again. I settled into my temporary place, rebuilt routines that didn't revolve around anticipating someone else's mood, and started filling my time with things I'd neglected. Early morning workouts, dinners with friends, long walks where no one texted asking why I wasn't home yet. I assumed he had finally let go. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't expected. Lauren. She'd always been his closest friend. The one who'd known him since before me. The one who used to joke that she'd known him in all his eras. After the breakup, she'd gone quiet. I assumed she'd chosen sides. Her message was short. "Hey, I know this isn't my place, but I thought you should know something." My stomach tightened. "He's officially seeing his ex. It started about a week after you moved out." I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over like they might change if I looked long enough. A week. 2 years together. Conversations about engagement. Shared holidays, shared space, shared plans. And 1 week after I left, he was with the woman he'd told me not to worry about. I didn't cry. What I felt was something sharper, cleaner, clarity. I typed back slowly. "Thank you for telling me. I appreciate you being honest." She replied almost immediately. "I'm really sorry. For what it's worth, I think he made a huge mistake. You were good to him." I didn't respond after that. There was nothing left to say. Here's the part that surprised me most. I wasn't devastated. Angry? Yes. Hurt? A little. Vindicated? Absolutely. But heartbroken? No. Somewhere in the last month of our relationship, I'd already started grieving it. The constant defense of my own needs. The way I'd learned to doubt my instincts. The emotional labor of staying calm while being dismissed. This news didn't break my heart. It confirmed what my body had known long before my mind caught up. He hadn't chosen her after losing me. He'd chosen her long before, and just waited for me to leave so he wouldn't have to feel guilty. I threw myself into my life. Work became grounding instead of draining. I went to the gym more regularly, reconnected with friends I'd grown distant from while trying to keep my relationship afloat. Kevin convinced me to join his recreational basketball league, something I hadn't done in years. I wasn't trying to replace him. I was trying to remember myself. That's when I met Allison. She was a coworker of Kevin's girlfriend. They'd been nudging me toward meeting her for weeks, and I kept brushing it off. Eventually, I agreed to a group dinner. Low stakes, no expectations. Allison was 33, worked in nonprofit development, calm in a way that didn't demand attention. She listened without waiting for her turn to talk. When she laughed, it felt genuine, not performative. We talked for 3 hours. It felt easy. We started seeing each other casually. Coffee dates, walks, movies. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. She knew I was coming out of something messy. She didn't push for labels or reassurance. She just showed up. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to fight for space in someone's life. I didn't know it then, but the real escalation hadn't even happened yet. About 3 weeks into seeing Allison, I suggested dinner at my favorite Italian place downtown. It was a small decision, familiar, safe. A restaurant I'd loved long before my ex ever knew it existed. It was early March, cold enough that everyone rushed in with scarves still wrapped tight around their necks. The place smelled like garlic and wine and warmth. We were halfway through dinner, laughing about something minor from Allison's workday, when I felt the energy at the table shift. Her smile faded just slightly. She was looking past me. "Is that your ex?" she asked quietly. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, and his hand was resting on her lower back, the woman he told me not to worry about. She was wearing the black dress she used to call her special occasion dress, the one she wore to my company's holiday party last year, the one I'd once helped zip up. And then she saw me. Her face changed in seconds. Surprise, confusion, recognition. Then something sharper, hurt mixed with anger. He noticed her freeze and followed her gaze to our table. The discomfort on his face told me everything I needed to know about how much he'd talked about me. I nodded politely. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative. Then I turned back to Allison. "Yes," I said, "that's him." Allison didn't flinch. She smiled softly and leaned in. "She's pretty," she said. "Bad taste in who to date after you, but pretty." I laughed despite myself. A real laugh, the kind that comes from relief more than humor. The host seated them 3 tables away, just close enough to be unavoidable if I looked past Allison. I made a conscious decision not to. 10 minutes later, I felt someone standing beside us. "Hi," she said. "I didn't expect to see you here." "It's a public restaurant," I replied calmly. "I come here sometimes." She glanced at Allison, then back at me. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" There it was, the test. "This is Allison," I said evenly. "Allison, this is my ex-boyfriend." Allison extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." The smile my ex returned didn't reach her eyes. "I didn't realize you were seeing anyone," she said, voice tight. "It's been a month," I replied. "I'm allowed to." She laughed, too quickly. Of course you are." Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "You look happy." "I am," I said, and I meant it. She opened her mouth again, like she had more to say, something sharp, something meant to reclaim power, but Allison gently cleared her throat. "We're in the middle of dinner," Allison said kindly, "but it was nice meeting you." My ex flushed. "Right, enjoy your meal," she muttered, walking back to him. For the rest of the night, I saw her barely touch her food while he tried, unsuccessfully, to engage her in conversation. Allison reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" she asked. I surprised myself with the answer. "Yeah," I said, "I really am." But later, lying in bed alone, the images replayed anyway. Not because I missed him, but because I realized how close I'd come to staying in something that made me feel small. That was the lowest point. Not longing, not heartbreak, but the sobering realization of how easily I could have stayed and lost myself, and how grateful I was that I didn't. The real turning point didn't happen in the restaurant. It happened later that night, after Allison and I left. We walked out into the cold, our breath visible in the streetlights. I expected that familiar crash afterward, the emotional hangover, the second-guessing, the spiral. I'd been bracing for it the entire walk to the car. It never came. Instead, there was a strange calm settling in my chest. Not numbness, not denial, clarity. Allison noticed it before I said anything. "You didn't disappear back there," she said as we drove. "Most people do." "I used to," I admitted. "I used to fold in on myself and replay everything until I convinced myself I was the problem." She glanced over. "What changed?" I thought about it for a moment. I stopped arguing with what was already true. That night was the first time I fully saw the power shift. Not because my ex was uncomfortable, not because he'd been caught, but because I wasn't seeking his reaction anymore. I wasn't measuring my worth against his attention or approval. I was done auditioning for a role I'd already outgrown. A week later, Lauren texted me again. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she wrote, but after the restaurant, things blew up. She accused him of not defending her. They fought in the parking lot. It was bad. I stared at the message, then set my phone down. For the first time, someone else's chaos didn't pull me back in. Apparently, she'd been spiraling since that night, obsessing over how I looked, how calm I seemed, how easily I'd moved on. She kept telling friends she thought I'd come back, that I'd cool off, that I'd realize I was being dramatic. When I didn't, it broke the version of the story she'd been telling herself. 2 weeks later, at 11 p.m., my phone lit up with his name. A long message, rambling, emotional, confessional. He said seeing me had made him realize he'd made a mistake, that his ex was nice, but she wasn't me, that he'd sabotaged something real because commitment scared him, that he wanted another chance. I read it twice. Then I showed it to Allison. "What do you want to do?" she asked gently. "Nothing," I said. "I want to do nothing." She smiled. "That's more than okay." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't walking away out of anger anymore. I was walking forward out of self-respect. I didn't respond to his message. Not that night, not the next morning, not even after I saw the small notification that told me he'd noticed I'd read it. 3 days later, another message came through. "I see you read my text. You can't even give me the respect of a response?" That one stung, not because it hurt me, but because it revealed how little had actually changed. For 2 years, respect had always meant me explaining, me calming, me accommodating. Silence to him felt like cruelty because it took away his ability to manage the narrative. This time I replied, "I'm not ignoring you to punish you. I simply have nothing left to say. You made your choice. I made mine. Please stop contacting me." He didn't reply. A week later, Kevin told me he'd run into him at a bar. They'd talked briefly, awkwardly. Apparently, things with his ex hadn't lasted. "She was still hung up on you," Kevin said carefully. He said it felt like he was competing with a ghost. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't need them, because the fallout wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't look like revenge or victory. It looked like quiet isolation. Friends who'd once rallied around him grew distant, not because they'd chosen me, but because the truth had made itself impossible to ignore. The timeline, the overlap, the way everything lined up just a little too neatly. People stopped defending him. His ex disappeared from group events. Social media posts stopped. The confident couple energy vanished as quickly as it had appeared. And I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't block him out of anger. I didn't check his pages. I didn't ask for updates. I let the past stay where it belonged. With Allison, things deepened naturally. No grand declarations, no rush promises, just consistency. She included me without effort, introduced me to her friends without hesitation, asked about my day, and listened to the answer. When plans changed, she talked to me, not around me. There were no power struggles, no emotional tests, no moments where I felt like I needed to earn my place. One night, lying on the couch with her head on my shoulder, she said something that stuck with me. "You don't flinch anymore." She was right. I wasn't bracing for impact. I wasn't waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under me. I wasn't afraid to ask for what I needed. Because I'd already survived the worst-case scenario, and it turned out to be survivable. The person who lost the most in all of this wasn't me. It was the one who thought boundaries were optional, and love was something that would always wait. It's been 3 months now. Not 3 months of dramatic transformation or poetic closure, just 3 months of living without the constant weight of being misunderstood. 3 months of waking up without checking my phone for messages that made my chest tighten. 3 months of not having to rehearse my feelings in my head before daring to express them. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. It became lighter. Allison and I are still together. We're taking things at a pace that feels intentional, not rushed. Next month, we're traveling to Portland. Her idea. She found a small bed and breakfast, mapped out food spots and hiking trails, and shared the plan with me, like she was excited to experience it with me, not just near me. That's the difference. With my ex, I always felt like I was negotiating for space in his life. Like love was something I had to earn by being easier, quieter, more accommodating. With Allison, I'm already there. Not because I demanded it, but because she wants me there. People have asked if I think my ex ever really loved his ex-girlfriend, or if he was just trying to prove something. Honestly, I think he loved the feeling of being wanted by 2 people at once. I think he wanted me to fight for him while keeping her as a backup. When I refused to play that role, when I actually walked away, it shattered the story he'd built about himself. And that's not my burden to carry. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about him. It was about me. I learned that boundaries don't make you difficult. They make you honest. I learned that being understanding should never require abandoning yourself, and that love that asks you to shrink is not love worth keeping. Walking away wasn't dramatic. It wasn't empowering in the way movies make it look. It was quiet, resolute, lonely at times. But it gave me back something I didn't realize I'd lost. My sense of self. And once you have that again, you don't beg to be chosen. You choose yourself. Every time.